I never believed the dark web as bad as people made it out to be. Sure, there were stories, gruesome, horrifying ones, but they felt exaggerated, like urban legends blown out of proportion. Still, my curiosity got the better of me one night. I was alone, bored, and after reading a few forum posts about secret websites hidden deep in the dark web, I decided to dive in. It wasn't hard to access. A few downloads, some setup, and I was there, navigating pages that felt like broken versions of the normal web. Mostly, it was underwhelming. Just a lot of old forums, anonymous message boards, and shady marketplaces. But then, I found it. The link was buried in a discussion thread, almost dismissed by the users as fake, but something about it drew me in. The title was simple: The Final Layer. No one seemed to know what it was, but those who had apparently visited that page talked in vague, cryptic terms. Some claimed to have been there the same day after seeing what was there, only to never return. I clicked on the link. The screen went black for a few seconds before a simple message appeared. Welcome to the final layer. Are you sure you want to proceed? I hesitated. The rational part of me was screaming to stop, to just close the browser and forget about it. But another part, the part that always wanted to see more, pushed me forward. I clicked on yes. The screen flickered, and then nothing. Just darkness. I waited, every second sounding louder than the last. The screen flickered, and then nothing. Just darkness. I waited, my heart pounding louder with every second of silence. Then, without warning, my webcam flicked on. I hadn't even noticed if it was still plugged into my computer. My own face stared back at me from the screen, illuminated in the dim light of my room. A message appeared on my screen. We see you. A chill ran down my spine. I instinctively reached for the webcam to disconnect it, but before I could, the image of myself disappeared, replaced by a grainy, low-quality video feed. It was a room, almost identical to mine, a small, dimly lit bedroom with a desk and a computer. In the center of the room sat someone, or something. At first, I thought it was just a figure, hunched over. But as the image cleared slightly, I saw me. The person in the video was me. Same clothes, same room, same everything. But something was off. The me on the screen wasn't moving. They just sat there, completely still, staring at their own monitor. I blinked, feeling a growing sense of panic. When I opened my eyes, the figure on the screen was gone. In its place, a new message appeared. You're next. I stood up, trying to close the browser, but my computer froze. The video feed flickered back on, but this time, the person on the screen wasn't sitting still. They were standing, facing the camera, just staring with a blank expression. And slowly, ever so slowly, they started walking toward their door. My door. I whipped around, heart in my throat. My bedroom door was shut, just as it had been when I started this nightmare. But then, softly, I heard it. The creak of my door was slowly being opened. I rushed over to it, but when I grabbed the handle, it was ice cold. No matter how hard I pulled, it wouldn't move. I glanced back at my screen. The figure was gone from the video feed. Then I heard the floor creak behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. At least I thought it was. I grabbed my phone, trying to call for help, but the screen was black. Dead battery. I was completely alone, trapped in my own room, with something or someone I couldn't quite explain. That's when I heard the breathing. It was right behind me. I froze, unable to move, every muscle in my body locking up with fear. The breathing grew louder, closer, like whoever it was inches from my neck. And then, in a voice so soft it was almost a whisper, I heard it. "You shouldn't have come here." The light flickered, and in a brief moment of darkness, I felt it, a hand brushing against my shoulder. When the light came back on, the room was empty again. No one was there. But the door was wide open now. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I bolted out of my room and didn't stop until I was outside, gasping for air. I never went back to the dark web after that experience. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone in my room, I swear I can still hear the breathing. It was one of those late nights where sleep seemed impossible. I was scrolling through the usual corners of the internet, bored out of my mind. One forum in particular caught my attention, a thread discussing the dark web. Most people shared the usual horror stories about drugs, illegal weapons, or hackers. But one user named Ghost Proxy mentioned something I'd never heard of before: the Red Room auction. It was described as a live-streamed event on the darkest corners of the dark web, where the wealthy could anonymously bid on people, kidnapped victims. The winner got to decide what happened to them. The whole thing sounded far-fetched, but Ghost Proxy swore it was real, hidden deep behind layers of encryption. He posted a cryptic link, which led to a site that seemed too basic to be dangerous. I knew I shouldn't, but I clicked on it anyways. After some initial loading, I was redirected to a login screen with nothing but a blinking cursor. I typed in guest and pressed enter. To my surprise, it worked. The site was nothing but a black background with a countdown timer in the center of the screen. Auction starts in 2 minutes. There was no way I was about to watch what I thought I might see. But still, I was drawn in. I couldn't stop. The timer ran down to 0, and the screen switched to a live feed of a dimly lit room. At first, I couldn't make out much, just a chair in the middle of the room, and something or someone was tied to it. The figure looked lifeless, slumped over. The chat box on the side of the screen lit up with messages. Hundreds of anonymous users were typing in the chat. "Let's start! I've got 10K on the table. What are the rules for tonight?" I realized this wasn't just a myth. It was real. Too real. The figure in the chair groaned. It was a woman, blindfolded and gagged. I froze. Suddenly, a distorted voice came through the feed. "Tonight's auction begins now. The rules are simple. The highest bidder decides the fate." There was no hesitation in the chat. Bids came flooding in. $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. I couldn't move. I wanted to look away, but it was like I was glued to the screen. The woman's breathing became more erratic, her chest rising and falling rapidly as if she could sense what was happening, even though she couldn't see it. The bids climbed higher and higher. $50,000, $80,000. Finally, a user named Overseer typed $100,000. Everything stopped. The chat went silent, and for a moment, there was no sound except for the woman's muffled sobs. "Sold," the voice said. "Overseer, what's your command?" There was a pause. The tension was suffocating, and then the response appeared on the screen. "Make her disappear." I could barely comprehend what was happening. The screen flickered, and 2 men in masks entered the frame. One of them pulled out a syringe. The other tightened the restraints on the woman. I felt sick. This wasn't just a show. This was real life, and I was watching it happen in front of my eyes. I slammed my laptop shut, my hands shaking. I had seen enough, more than enough. I paced around my room, trying to convince myself it was all just some elaborate hoax. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of the woman tied to the chair haunted me, the blank screen of my laptop taunting me. I couldn't shake the feeling that, somehow, they knew I had watched. The next day, my laptop started acting strange. Pop-up ads, glitches, things I couldn't explain. And then, in the middle of the night, I got an email. No subject, no message, just a single attachment. A photo. It was me, sitting at my desk, staring at the screen. I'm not sure who sent it or how they got it, but now, every time I hear the sound of my phone buzzing or a new email coming through, I'm absolutely terrified. Terrified that they're still watching. It was around 2 a.m. when the email landed in my inbox. I'd been up late, applying to freelance gigs on job boards, desperate for something to get me through the next month. Bills were stacking up, and the regular jobs just weren't cutting it anymore. The subject line was simple. Freelance opportunity, high pay for simple work. I didn't recognize the sender, but that wasn't unusual. These sites often connected you with people all over the world. I clicked on the email and scanned it quickly. The offer was for data entry. Tedious, but easy. And the pay was insane. $2,000 for just a few hours of work. It sounded too good to be true. The email contained a link with instructions to download a specific program for the job. My gut told me to delete it, but my bank account said otherwise. Against my better judgment, I clicked the link. The download was fast, and soon, I was looking at a simple, old-school interface. It seemed innocent enough, like any other basic data entry software. A box popped up asking for my name and confirmation that I agreed to the terms of the job. I hesitated, but typed in my name. Almost immediately, files began to appear on my screen. Long lists of names, numbers, and what looked like personal information. At first, I didn't think much of it. Companies often had customer lists for data entry work. My job was simply to copy and paste them into specific fields. Easy money. Or so I thought. The work went smoothly for about an hour. Then, I noticed something strange. The names started to look familiar. One by one, I realized they were names of people I knew. An old college roommate, a former boss, even my next-door neighbor. My stomach dropped. How was this possible? How was this legal? It had to be some coincidence, right? But as I scrolled through more of the files, I saw more and more names that hit closer to home. Friends, family members, people I interacted with regularly. I stopped typing. This wasn't some random job. These files were personal. Too personal. I wanted to shut the program down, but when I tried to exit, the screen froze. My mouse wouldn't move. A black window popped up in the corner of my screen, and a message appeared in plain white text. Don't stop now. I blinked, heart racing. Who was on the other side of this? I yanked my hands away from the keyboard, refusing to continue. But the message appeared again, more urgent this time. You're almost done. Finish the job. I slammed the laptop shut and stood up, pacing in my room. There was no way I was going to keep working on whatever this was. I had clearly stumbled into something I shouldn't have. I decided to wipe my hard drive, maybe even buy a new laptop tomorrow. But when I opened the computer again, the black window was still there. This time, there was a new line of text. "We see you." The webcam light flicked on. I stared at the tiny glowing dot, my blood turning cold. Someone was watching me. I reached for the webcam, trying to cover it, but another message popped up. Too late for that. A new file appeared on the screen, titled, "Last Warning." I didn't want to open it, but something compelled me to click. Inside was a photo of my apartment building, just taken moments ago. My front door was clearly visible. I felt a pulse in my throat. How did they know where I lived? I quickly unplugged my laptop and rushed to the door to check the locks. It was deadbolted, just as I'd left it, but I still felt like I was being watched. When I turned back to my laptop, another file had opened. This time, it was a video feed. Grainy, but unmistakable. It was the hallway outside of my apartment. The camera was shaky, as if held by a hand, and the person filming was slowly approaching my front door. I froze, staring in disbelief as the camera moved closer and closer to my apartment. My mind raced, trying to figure out who it could be, what I could do. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone to call the police. Before I could dial, the last message appeared on my screen. "Open the door." I felt a cold sweat break out over my body. I didn't want to believe any of this was real, but the heavy thud on my door made me jump. Someone was on the other side. I backed away. My phone slipped out of my hand, crashing to the floor. I stood there, helpless, staring at the door as the knock came again, this time louder. And then, silence. I waited for what felt like hours, my breath shallow, every creak and groan of the apartment filling me with dread. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. By the time the sun rose, I packed up whatever I could and left that place for good. I haven't opened my laptop since, and I've been staying in different places, trying to keep myself off the radar. But I know deep down that they're still watching. That knock will come again. It's only a matter of time.